Well, hello there. You're welcome to a very wonderful podcast. This is the Speaking of God podcast, where we aim to change the narrative and bring God back into the conversation. And today, we thank you for even joining us, coming all the way to support us in this episode. Now, today, I have a very interesting conversation for you. I have a very, very, very great person here by the name of Ammishaddai Ofori. Ammishaddai is the founder of Innovation Spark, an innovation hub here in Africa that aims to collaborate with entrepreneurs to help them to solve most of Africa's relevant is it was a very great time really talking to him as we deliberated on very, very, very important issues from building godly product, the best way to be able to represent Christ in the corporate world, and several aspects that were very interesting to me. Now, Amish is a very interesting person, person who brings the world together and sort of attracts the world to himself in so many ways. He's a joy and a wonderful and a fun person to be with. It's a known saying that whenever Ammishaddai enters a room, everybody knows Ammishaddai has entered the room. And it was always a dream whenever I started this podcast to really talk to him and really pick up his mind on some of the most relevant issues. So today was a great day for me catching up with a guy who has really, really been at the frontier of African innovation. This is my conversation with Ammishaddai Ofori. Enjoy. Ammishaddai, you're welcome.
Wow, whoever did Ammishaddai guy sounds very impressive. Thank you, Arthur. It's a pleasure being here. I just have to say all the glory is to God, but we are also grateful for what He's able to use us for.
Well,
Thank you for having me. Let's have the conversation. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to trust me. And it's because it's such a privilege whenever I come to sort of pick up your mind and know what's going on, because you are in several industries, you are delving into several areas, and it's always nice to really brainstorm with you. Now, I think one thing I was checking up with your name, is it the people of your name is very rare actually. It's not one of the names you see
Yeah.
across many places, and I'm sure you had to explain the meaning of your name to many people. And I was just checking on, like, let me know whether I'm right.
Yeah.
Is the people of the Almighty? Oh my
Yeah,
God!
that's correct. Yeah.
So I told you we have
It's a
someone who is
powerful
more
name.
than Zeus himself. Yeah, I was
Oh,
thinking
please.
your name is a Greek name too. Is it a Greek name?
From what I know, Hebrew is Aramaic.
Oh,
So he was part of the first batch of Israelites who were moving out of Egypt into the promised land.
oh,
Yeah, so it's Aramaic.
oh.
Yeah.
So the name is coming from Jesus' own language. Okay. The language that Jesus spoke. So there's not like ordinary names. Okay. It's not your level. Wow. So and that's quite an interesting name, and actually
Yeah.
good to have you here. So today our topic is going to be designing godly products. So we are delving into designing godly
Okay.
products. And the idea is that every person is trying to build, somebody is trying to create the next future. And as Christians, we've been called to create something new. So we will be delving into what will be the roadmap in trying to take this venture up, even as God has called us with several ideas. So, I was wondering, first of all, where do ideas and visions sort of come from? Because it's quite mysterious where things come into people's mind. Suddenly they begin to create the world. So, in your view, where do these sort of ideas stem from itself?
Well, Emmanuel, you've asked a very interesting question. Controversial sometimes, but I'm glad this is a Christian podcast, so we can also speak from the perspective of God. One of the books I've been listening to actually is The Power of Your Subconscious. It's by a doctor called Dr. Joseph Murphy. And he talks about how we have an infinite consciousness that when we are going to sleep, we can speak to it and say, as I go to sleep, my infinite consciousness, speak to me on this subject. if I want to understand the rules of physics, speak to me about this thing that I'm trying to solve. But he's a Christian. And so even when he talks about infinite consciousness, he uses a lot of Bible verses and he talks about how the Holy Spirit is our source of infinite consciousness, right? And so I would say right off the bat, that ideas come from God. Even in the Bible, when Nebuchadnezzar had this dream that he couldn't interpret, it was from God. He had to consult Daniel, who told him these things come from God. No man can interpret to you unless God. But I was just speaking with an investment banker this week, actually, and he was talking about these wild ideas that he have, right? He was an investment banker and now he's an Greek entrepreneur. And he would have these amazing ideas for his venture. He would talk about how he would pray to God before he went to sleep. And when he woke up, he would get the craziest ideas. And when he implemented them, they would be exactly what they are looking for. I grew up in the Church of Pentecost. One of the leading industrialists in Ghana. Some of you may have heard of him, Zoom Lion. The way he got his idea was he went to a prayer meeting. He was very broke at that time, was complaining to God for an idea, and God told him one word, baller. And when he heard the word, he was so upset. Say, God, I'm trying to make money. What do you mean by baller? And God told him, yes, baller, go and do baller. Yeah, and so the story goes like he started with a tricycle, started going house to house, collecting people's refuse. And with time, he got 3 tricycles. With time, he got a truck. And now the story is told, right? He's one of the biggest waste management companies in Africa. And that idea came from God.
Wow.
So for the sake of this conversation, I'll just go straight to the point and say ideas come from God, but other people are able to pervert it and get ideas from the spiritual realm. If you know the story of Nikola Tesla, the guy who invented alternating currents, he would speak also to his subconscious, sometimes go into trances, sometimes go into like very meditative states just to get ideas for alternating currents, transmitting electricity without the use of. He was one of the first people to invent Wi-Fi electricity, if you can understand that concept. And he would always attribute, yes, yeah, he would always attribute this to the spiritual realm. So, yeah, if you're a Christian, I would say ideas come from God.
And this sort of makes me wonder because you mentioned Tesla, you mentioned all these amazing names, and even that story of Zoom Lion is so amazing because we know what Zoom Lion really did. That is quite inspiring by itself. And looking at people like even Steve Jobs, I think because of his Buddhist philosophy, he would try to, I think, bend reality in such a way to create the next thing. And I think it's believed that it's one of the things that even nearly let him be killed because when he got the disease he thought he could change the reality of stuff and did not really seek medical help in time. So this sort of makes me wonder, is it like the ideas are restricted to only Christians or they are just something that is just roaming out, whether you are thinking of music, whether you're thinking of starting a company, whether you're thinking of anything, is it just like it's floating out there and whoever wants to really sort of take up the chance can do that? You let me know.
No, I would argue that ideas are not limited to Christians only. From what I understand, and we can refer to scripture for this. I'm reading, okay, so I'm reading this book called Supernatural, right? I've forgotten the name of the author. I think he's called Eckhart. And in Supernatural, he argues that God is seated in heaven with a council of holy ones, right? So if you know the original definition of Elohim is the Godhead, right? It's a council of gods.
The rulers.
And yes, and at a point in time, the reason why God chose Abraham and his descendants as his people is because arguably, he had told the other gods, this is how I am going to take a people and make them mine. And that's why he was always jealous and upset with the Israelites when they went astray, because they were supposed to depict what it means to be people of God. And then the other members of the godly council also had other subjects or other humans under them, but they were wicked and unjust. So in verses, it says that you have been unjust in treating these people, right? So all these people have permission to interfere in the lives of their subjects, i.e., human beings. And there are schools of thought in Christian philosophy that even during the time when wickedness abounded on earth, the sons of men came on earth, intermarried, and these people would exchange ideas with these sons of men and teach them like philosophy that was way ahead of their time, technology that was way ahead. And because of that, man would use the technology for wickedness, right? So those ideas are not from they were not from God, but they were available to man, and they were also available from the supernatural realm. So to answer your question, I don't think it's limited to the Christians. I think anyone who can tap into the spiritual realm or deep into their subconscious or spend enough time with themselves will be able to have ideas.
So this makes me wonder. So is it the person that is vying for to create something new that normally catches this? Because if you are God and you're sitting down, you're like, okay, you want to solve the issue of malaria in the world, and well, the
Yeah.
Christian out there is not researching into how to solve this malaria, but yet
Mm-hmm.
there's this guy who does not believe in me, and he's in the bush somewhere checking the plants out,
Yeah.
checking all the stuff out. Is it like you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be delivering the stuff to the Christian guy, or it's like, okay, let's go to the bush? This guy doesn't believe in me, doesn't acknowledge me, but I think this person really has
Mm.
the system in place to be able to, after finding the solution, be able to distribute it to the
Mm-hmm.
world. Is that what God will be? Is ideas, are they sort of built up to whoever they feel would value them and take it to the next step? Is that how it is? Sort of.
Yeah, so I can't speak for God, but what I do know is
I like that.
those who are ready, yeah,
No
those who are
PR.
ready receive the idea. Yeah. So in your intro, you mentioned that I'm in the tech and startup space. By God's grace, I've had the opportunity to listen to a lot of startup ideas, right? People come and pitch. And I always tell people ideas are a dime in a dozen. The difference is always your ability to implement or execute. So I've heard multiple people share the same ideas, but how they execute it determines whether or not they are successful. And I feel like it's always the person who's ready, who's most ready to execute or implement the idea that gets like the rhema of it, right? I think that it doesn't discriminate who it's, ideas don't discriminate who they go to. They go to those who are ready to implement. There's a famous saying that says, luck is readiness meeting preparation, right? The most prepared you are, it might feel like luck, but you were prepared enough to take that opportunity. And I love reading. So one of the books I'm just rereading is George S. Clason's Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh,
And they were talking about the concept of lady luck. Yeah. And why is it that some men seem fortunate to make a lot of money whilst others don't? Does lady luck favor some men other than others? And what um Akkad, the richest man, was saying was, no, what he has found is Lady Luck meets everyone, but some of them are prepared and others are not. And for those who are prepared, they are able to leverage that luck and build wealth for themselves. Yeah.
wow. Well, that's so inspiring. So God is ready to work with whoever um has been prepared. I think that brings us to the story of David, right? Where it's like David was
Mm.
prepared in that place, and then when it was time, he was totally deployed. And we're also looking at people. I think a lot of people prepare um so well. Especially God gives us a lot of examples. Even the story of Cyrus, who was a king, and in that sort of context, it
Mm,
was only a king that was able to make the law that's sort of going to take the Israelites to their place. Um,
mm,
because that's not
yeah.
going to take a school teacher, that's not going to take anyone. And I think that was one of the things that we realized,
Mm,
that God was telling him that you don't know me, but I know you. And all the stuff you've been winning, all the
mhm,
victories in war, it's because I was getting you ready so that you could make the decree. And
mm,
that is such an interesting thought when you think of it. So that's great. But so what we are learning, um
yeah.
is, yeah,
And
so what,
if you look at that, says the whole world is the Lord's, right? And the
yeah,
fullness thereof. So even if you're not a Christian, you are still part of God's world and his systems. And sometimes he uses whoever, even if they haven't confessed that they are Christians yet, for his grand scheme of things. Right? He's used Pharaoh to bring himself glory before. He's used Cyrus like you just quoted. So yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
yeah, and that's true. Now we are going to go, like, even off cultural Christian. If you're looking at some of the greatest builders, people, some of the platforms you are using, Google, the search engine, these are people that don't believe in God. Um, Looking even secularly, Elon Musk, taking rockets to space, he doesn't believe in God.
Mm,
Um, a lot of people, from both sides of the game. Isaac Newton was a God believer. I think he was
mm,
between theology and science. Most of his stuff. One of the interesting stories,
mm,
of course, will not be, to most Christians will be like, oh, that is to the negative side. But I remember reading the story of
mm,
J.K. Rowling, right? J.K. Rowling was
mm.
always, and I was reading the
Yeah.
process through which he wrote the Harry Potter series. He had
Mm,
divorced,
mm,
and he was working, and he was balancing a lot of stuff, and he would go back and he would write the
mm,
story Harry Potter. And it must have been, whatever was using her must have been, because she could write it, and it was given to her to write it, whether it's on the positive side, because that also made witchcraft like very neutralized in the world.
mm,
But it
mhm.
showed me that whoever you are, um they are watching, like people are watching, and it's like,
Yeah.
this guy can carry the next project, this guy can either destroy the world, whether you are Hitler, you can get an idea that can totally destroy
Mm,
the world, or you can be the person
mm,
that can really change the world. And that's the importance of why we are deliberating on this topic, because we believe that God really
mm,
wants us to become agent of something, and every side can get,
mm.
some 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 can make you the Hitler of the world, and some can make you
Yeah.
the Billy Graham of the world. So those are like the
Mm,
mixes of what we are learning here. But let's take
yeah.
a sort of a cap to Genesis chapter 1, which will lead me to my next question, right? So in Genesis chapter 1, we see God breathing over the waters. The first sentence is very peculiar. I wanted to read that, but I think because of
Mm,
time, we just move on. But it's a very famous
yeah.
first statement. In the beginning, God created the heavens and
Sure.
the earth. I wanted to read it,
Yeah.
but I realized we already know the first line of the Bible. Um, so to me, it looks like God really takes some thinking in building stuff. And so for somebody
Mm,
who wants to um impact the world, what will be the thinking process you think the person should go through in building something that would
mm.
impact the world for the positive, just like God does, mostly.
Yeah. So glad you brought this up. I'm teaching at church tomorrow, and the what I've been studying has been upside down principles, right? If you take the system of the world has principles. If you take science, science has principles. There's the law of gravity, there's the law of motion. To oppose the law of gravity, there's the law of aerodynamics that helps Musk to fly his rockets, right? The same way God created the world with his systems. And for us as Christians, it makes sense. But to the rest of the world, it might feel like upside down principle, right? An example is love. The upside down principle of love is that God is love. And the more you love, the more you become like God. But it also means that people will take you for granted, right? Down principle of making wealth is actually giving. The more you give, the more you receive. So when God was creating the system, the world, when he was creating the world, he had systems in place. In Job, he says he laid the foundation of the earth. That means that, guess what? There was a foundation. There was a principle behind it. And for someone who's going to build, I would say that the first principle that God talks about is in Proverbs, where he says that a man plans his ways, but the Lord orders his steps. And he says that whatever you plan to do, commit to God so that you will be successful. Right? Of course, like if you go the system of the world, the idea is you get an idea, you take it through for a startup, for example, business model canvas, you answer all the questions and you run with it. But even I, as an investor and a consultant, know that there are always going to be like tweaks and elements that you are not aware of. In economics, they are called pistol, right? Politics, economics, social, technology, etc. But the caveat for investors is always, is the team dynamic enough to be able to withstand whatever will come their way? The first upside down principle in you developing your idea is to commit it to God. That's the first, that's the foundation. And then if you're a Christian and you have practiced listening to God and the Holy Spirit, He can literally give you the step-by-step approach. And it's so weird because I spoke to a very successful man this week and he gets his ideas from God. Like none of his ideas have been through master's programs, PhD programs. He literally gets it from God, implements it like how the Holy Spirit tells him, and it becomes successful. And I'm talking like mega success, like a great industrial revolution. I'm talking, yeah.
So this was very interesting to me. In fact, one of the things that when you read the Bible, especially in Job, God and then in the Psalms, God will be like, they did not acknowledge me as God, and He did not sort of feel bad that oh you're getting my discoveries, but I think the patent rights should be acknowledged. I gave you the idea, I gave you the 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 mindset. So people normally don't, and it's the reason why we set up this podcast, to really bring people from different communities and give them the platform to be able to say, yes, this idea was from God and He really helped me. So your first case was true. We should start with God. And the second thing you said was the thinking process should be directed by the God who gave you the idea. And I think that is very right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Amish. That was
Okay,
very
so to break it down, you're very welcome, Arthur. So your thinking process should be influenced by God. And then God, in His wisdom, has given men the wisdom to implement things, right? It's like the way God, I have understood Him, is He sets systems in process and He gives us the understanding to the systems. And so you might have an idea, you have committed it to God, but to implement it, you might have to go and see a business coach, right? To teach you what a lean model canvas is, or what customer profiling is, or even just putting together like a project charter, right? Um, and it's all in context with what God has taught men to do. So now in the age of technology, men know how to create a car. If God tells you to enter a car business, yes, He might tell you how unique your cars are going to be, but you can also learn how cars are made. And you can learn the principle of physics and automotive ICE engines or electric vehicles. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't want us to also be lazy in thinking that we shouldn't learn the principles for whatever we are doing. We consult God first, we get His approval, and we learn as much as we can in whatever field or sector that He has given us.
That's so wow. So what about the issue of finding examples and finding mentors within whatever space you are. So, how do you sort of navigate all those parts in trying to move to the next step?
One of my favorite movies is The Forge. I don't know if you've seen it. This is the sequel to War. Have you seen
Oh,
it?
I saw the posters and all that, but I really didn't get right
You
into
should
it.
definitely watch it. You should definitely watch it. Now, The Forge is about discipleship in Christ, but it's also the story of a young man who gets mentored by a successful Christian man.
Mm,
And it's very heartwarming to see how just in 1 year with mentorship and discipleship, this young man went from a very disrespectful young man who had no sense of direction or responsibility to becoming a man who helped his mentor close a 7 year deal. Right. And to me, if I've ever thought about mentorship, this is it. I had the privilege to have a few mentors. Some were Christian, some were not. But in every case, there was something that I could learn, right? How large deals are made, how to work in hyper productive environments and still be Christian. So
mm,
one of my mentors, God may he so rest in peace, is the CEO of Express Gas. He's one of the first gas companies in Ghana to allow you to order a LPG gas, right? You can order it via phone. It will be delivered to you with a full gas and they take your empty cylinder. It's a startup approach, very novel. LPG can be very traditional, but this guy implemented it. He's Ghanaian, but he raised, I think, $3 million or so from a European bank. So he knows the way of the world and he also loves God. So I would see this man like tired and he'll still come to church in the evening or on Saturday morning. And he'll tell you, everything I'm doing is for God. I'm telling you. And
love it.
unfortunately, he passed. Yeah. But the testimonies around this man, they were bigger than I thought. The
Mm,
number of people who said he has been generous to them, has helped pay their fees, etc. I couldn't count. And that's when I knew like how important this person was.
wow. So
So for
that's some,
mentorship,
yeah.
sorry. The first thing I would say, Emmanuel, is you identify the people in the space that you want to grow in. Look for the highest person that you can reach in that space and approach the person and say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I would love to learn from you. If you can commit just 1 hour a week to me and be very specific with what help you need. Okay. Like mentors are some of the most busy people, but they appreciate passing on knowledge. And don't be afraid to approach whoever you want to approach. Just go for it. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so nice. So it's like you're showing us that examples sort of give you the path and the process that you need. And yeah,
Yes.
wow, that is so enlightening. And to see that Christians are really showing this up, this is so beautiful. So thank you for the story. Um,
Yeah.
one direction I wanted us to take this will be the aspect of faith. Why don't we see a lot of Christians blazing the trail within several spaces that we have? Is it that they don't take their faith and the stuff that God asked them to do to the next level? Is it like they don't believe in the stuff that the instructions that are given to them? They don't really believe in the ideas and have the courage to really move on with it. What could be the problem out there?
Um, so the meaning of my name, we talked about this at the beginning. It's people of the Almighty, right? One of
I
the
love your name.
yeah, yeah, I know, I love it too. I didn't always love it, but yeah, definitely love it now. And the Holy Spirit told me something. He said, my name gives me the opportunity to evangelize to people in the business space. Because if I tell you my name, you will ask me what it means,
Mm,
and I can automatically talk about God. The reason why I'm starting with this is if we are not seeing enough Christians at the top, it's probably because they are not professing their faith when they get to the top,
mm,
or they are compromising after they've gotten to the top. My wife and I were discussing about Tyler Perry and how it seems like his movies are not as Christ-centric as they used to be, or how he's found in circles that may not be, as Christian as we would think. And there's nothing wrong with that. Jesus, in his time, died with Pharisees and tax collectors, right? But nobody questioned whether or not he was Jesus or the Son of God when he was doing this. I think that most times when we get to the top, we compromise on our faith. And it's unfortunate because younger Christians or Christians who haven't gotten to the top then don't have examples of people who are at the top who are still Christian, right? One of my favorite apologists is a physicist, world-renowned physicist. I've forgotten his name now. When I remember, I'll bring it up. But this guy is at the top. He's a mathematician. He's at the top of education. Yes, Lennox, right? And he does not in any way shy away from his faith. And because of people like Lennox, I am able to confidently confess that I'm a Christian no matter where I am. Like in the past 3 years, I've been working with some of the most important decision makers in the country, right? And it's weird how when you get in that space, nobody wants to talk about God, but they are happy to talk about women on deals or anything else but God, right? And I found it interesting. Like, yeah, it took me a while to be able to even share like my faith on my status because I felt like too many people were on my status now. I had too many business partners on my status. What would they think of me if I'm sharing my faith, right? So, like, my wife told me, "Hey, why are you happy sharing anything but your faith? God looking for an opportunity to use you to share your faith." So it might be that when we get to the top, we are ashamed of God or we compromise. At least from my experience, that's what I've experienced.
And not to shame anybody, but I think it's because we have not practiced the art of being Christians at the top, or when exposed to people who have different worldviews. We haven't added that to our training sets whenever we go out there. So we are shocked and disarmed when we step into a world that everybody does not believe in what we believe. And then we God, because if you have 1,000, 10,000 people in church service, God looks glorious. God looks powerful. God looks like the main thing. And so we are very confident saying Jesus is natural. But then when you have 98% of people who don't believe in your God and are not enchanted by your God as they should be, your God becomes very small. And nobody wants the team that he's on to be very small. So it's like, I'm going to go to the other team so that I can hold my ground. But that is because we haven't practiced that art well. It's like, how do I become a scientist that still professes my faith at the top? Even as we are growing our career, we don't practice that. So I think that's what happens. And so we are forced, because we are forced to compromise, not because we really don't like God, but because this is unusual for us, and the safety method is to go back and keep our faith down while we do our job, at least the peaceful plan for us. So I think that the main idea is us practicing how to be Christians in a culture which is not Christian, and how to be confident in that. It turns out that when you do that, people suddenly have some sort of curiosity towards you. It's like, whoa, that is very interesting. But normally we think that we should be afraid, which is very weird. Because in our minds, people will shun us, but then people will look like, oh, so these guys are the people who don't do this. They don't do this and that. Yeah.
I'm so brought this up. In my Bible study today, that's John chapter 3. It was talking about how when we live a moral life, it exposes the world to their immorality, right? And because of that, it makes them hate you for holding them to a high standard. but that should never stop us from doing that. And I thought that was so significant, right? Just because you are living a morally upright life and people are feeling threatened by it doesn't mean that you should shun living that life in any way. You should rather provoke others to be challenged, to step up their game. And you mentioned you have spoken with Ellie earlier on. Ellie has a piece that talks about how the standards of the world are too low for him, right?
Yeah, I love that
And that
piece.
that's a really good piece. And he said like they are too low for me. They are beneath me. The standards that God holds us to is way higher, and He expects us to live according to those standards. Yeah.
Yeah. That was so lovely. I remember when he was flowing those bars, like everybody's mind was going crazy. I think for those who haven't
Yeah.
watched it, they should watch it. We may put the link down for someone to really enjoy the piece.
Yeah.
So that was nice bringing it up. So I think for now, I think this is also the reason why we're stepping up this game on this podcast is to provide people the platform to share their faith, to have the courage to be able to wherever industry you come from, you can still be able to take a break, and then we talk about God. So it's the reason why we have the speaking of God, because after the whole work, it's like, oh, what happened to God? Oh, speaking of God,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
we get back, we get back to the origin. So that is very interesting. But mostly the courage to really take God instruction to the next one seemed to be very difficult for us. So sometimes we don't see people from a certain part of the world shining out there.
Mhm.
Um, does um does Christianity or God working with you break the barrier? Sometimes your location, your race, your sex sort of limits you, even as God has given you something to create, something to develop. Um, is there such
Yeah.
the reality of such restriction, and how does God work through that? That.
Yeah. I think it's very tied into what we just discussed about why we don't expose God when we get to the top. So the thinking has been if I am too Christian, then I might not get access to some opportunities. Or yeah, I'm going to be barred from certain opportunities if I'm Christian. What I've noticed, right, personally from my end is most of the opportunities I've gotten when I've been bold enough to profess my faith have been opportunities that I never thought I could get
Mm,
or I had never even imagined, right? I'm currently transitioning from like full-time consulting to more remote consulting. So I'm working with a couple of Jewish guys actually, uh, but they're scattered all over the world. And for a brief moment, I was tempted to, go very secular and never talk about God. But like I mentioned, I started introducing more of who I am as a Christian. And I've had people refer me to opportunities because
mm,
I was able to say, this is who I am. I'm a
mm,
Christian. I'm married to only one wife. I'm family oriented. And I think it's definitely the grace of God, but it's also rather open opportunities than close them. And yes, sometimes it will close opportunities. Like there have been deals that I've been part of that kickbacks are a lot. Like this deal is too shady. And if you do speak up, then you're no longer part of this deal. But it's also how your conscience is slowly either built up or destroyed. And that might cost you the deal. But I think that is worth it. One of my mentors has had a similar case where he said no to a deal because of that. And then a few either months or years later, they called him back because he had been the person to say no to that. And so they were
mm,
looking for someone of integrity, and he was the person they thought about.
mm.
So I think for us, the cost of living as Christians is that we follow God no matter what. If it costs us a deal, that shouldn't stop us. Our end goal is eternal. And whatever we need at this time, God will provide. I think God is able to create opportunities that are bigger than even our biggest opportunities.
Wow. That's such a great lesson.
Yeah.
And I think I'm learning from that. So there are from what I'm seeing, there are two things that can happen to you. Either God's reputation goes before you and gets you friends, or God's reputation goes before you and gets you enemies. So that's very interesting to really notice. Wow. So this is beautiful. Also driving down into the location side, sometimes there are a lot of handicaps that come up during your journey in trying to fulfill God's dream for you. Like I was saying, sometimes it can be your sex, sometimes it can be your gender and sex are the same. It can be your race, it can be your country, it can be where you are located. It looks like where you are located is very disadvantaged, does not have the resource you need. So how do we overcome such challenges, even as we are moving on with the things of God?
Oh, so last week I was part of a John C. Maxwell Leadership Conference. Amazing. Live to lead. Yeah. And one of the things that John Maxwell spoke about was abundance mindset. And he said, if you have an abundance mindset, you are able to anticipate more, expect more, and do more, right? Regardless of where you're coming from. And I thought that was very powerful because, yes, like where you come from might feel limited. And honestly, let's admit, when you are in Africa, it might feel like you are disadvantaged.
Yeah.
But Emmanuel, you agree with me? Like, I am in Ghana, and the things I've been able to do by God's grace, I have friends who are outside the continent who haven't done it.
Yeah.
Right. And I strongly believe it's because of the hand of God upon my life. Just getting into a like Nest Africa, it's a program that has people from all over the world getting access to some of Silicon Valley's investors. We've had Facebook co-founders, Twitter co-founders, etc. pass through a remote location somewhere in Accra.
Beautiful.
Right? People would travel to the US, yeah, and not meet these people. I've met some of the most unlikely people here in Ghana. And I think it's only because of God ordering my steps. However, there are people outside Ghana who might have had opportunities, but have not. So yes, where we come from can be limiting. Our race, our gender, all these might be limiting according to the world standards. But that's why I told you about upside principles. The principles of God are upside down to what the world thinks. And God can choose the remote person and make like the best story out of him. And he didn't even have to leave where he's coming from. But you have to have an expectation from, you have to believe that the plans that he has for you are, plans to give you a successful end. They are plans for a future, right? In Jeremiah. So yeah, I would use my story to challenge people. I grew up in Takrady. Look, Takrady is chill. Everybody is
Taddy.
It's a very
And you happen to be very different. Everybody chill and calm except Mish.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what God can do, right? So from a young man who grew up in Takrady to whatever God is using my life for now, and even what he's going to use my life for, I think it's a great example of it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Just believe in God and expect more. He's able to do exceedingly abundantly and above all that you can ever think or imagine. But the basis is God, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
This is so beautiful. The basis is God. And I was just going back to what you said about John C. Maxwell, the live to lead concept, and living in with a mindset of abundance. And it may sound like just a leadership statement, but that is actually the mindset that God wants us to have. The biblical statement is God is able to make grace abound towards you, that having sufficiency of all things, you may abound unto every good work. the most famous scripture that we quote is, "My God shall supply all your needs." So I think the mindset is really true. Having that sort of makes you push your boundary towards the next level, because practically you always feel like you don't have enough of what you need to get to the next level. So having this sort of God mindset is really true. So Amish, thanks for even letting us delve into that. So yeah, we really delve into a lot. And
I agree. Yeah.
yeah,
Expand your territory. What's that verse in Isaiah? Yeah.
yeah, enlarge your
Go
territory.
ahead.
Yeah.
Now listen.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the side of, so now we move from getting the idea, we've moved from getting the impact of the idea, we've moved into having the courage, practicing what to do when God lifts you up. We've delved into overcoming all the handicaps and all that. We've delved into getting your mentorship, getting to get people who you can build with. And we'll delve into a bit of a mind issue. One more, which is the issue of patience, the patience of the builder. Sometimes you feel what you are building is taking so long. And it has taken years. The person that is running through my mind is Noah. It took him a long time to build that. So as Christians, how is patience relevant in making sure that we're able to finish what God started without aborting the mission?
So the fruit of the spirit, right? Patience is captured in there. And also in love. Another upside down principle I'm learning is that God is love. But if you read 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8, one of the attributes of that love is patience. So that means that patience is important to God. I have a solar system chart, and on the chart, it explains the relativity of time. So, on Earth, time moves differently from when I'm on Jupiter or Uranus or even Venus. And you would think that Venus and Mars, because they are closer to the sun, would have shorter days and nights. But some of them actually have longer days compared to the Earth. So it blew my mind when God said that a day is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years is like a day, and a day like 1,000 years. Because in God's realm, right, time, he's outside time, but also time moves differently depending on where you are. So for you, it might feel long, but for God, it's perfect timing and it's the right number of days that you need. Otherwise, God can make even the last minute miracle be so good that it will end up being perfect timing, right? There is a famous phrase. It's called the Pyrrhic victory. And a Pyrrhic victory is simply a victory that was so difficult to be won at such a great cost that it didn't feel like a victory anymore.
Yeah.
But the concept of Pyrrhic victory does not exist in, according to my understanding, the Christian faith. Like even when it feels like a Pyrrhic victory, it's able to restore, right? He says, I will restore what the locusts and the cankerworms have eaten. And I was listening to a message and was talking about what restoration means. He doesn't only just replaces, he replaces and then adds more. And so when we think about the concept of patience, then we are looking at it that as long as I am walking in faith and believing God for this, his timing is going to be rewarded and it's going to feel like that is the right time. But I admit, like, especially as a startup co-founder, sometimes things don't move as fast as we want, right?
Deadlines
But
and
for us as Christians, we are working with the understanding that God is going to come through. And when he comes through, it's going to be worth the wait.
Wow. That's so beautiful. So the patience of the builder, whatever you are building out there, know that God is going to come through. That's what Amish is telling us right now. So thanks so much for that. Now we're going to take a step forward. We already had a sort of taken a bite to the cake with that, which is learning to build. What do you need to be able to take that step in starting the stuff that God has asked you to start? Whether you want to enter the lighting company, you want to enter the software company, you want to enter the music industry, the engineering world, the health world. What are the key steps that you need little by little, even as you are moving through with that?
Okay. I spoke with Dr. Gordon. He is the head of design thinking lab at Ashesi University, one of my favorite universities in Ghana. Their motto is do, learn, do. So once you enter first year, they will give you an assignment, go and figure it. So you do the assignment with no theory behind it. And then they will teach you the theory. They'll make you do the assignment again. So you take an idea, they give you an assignment, you work on the assignment, you come back, they teach you the theory behind the assignment, and you go and do the assignment again. And I was explaining how when Moses got to the end of the Sea of Reeds, and the Egyptians were coming and the Israelites were complaining, and Moses was praying, what God told him was, why talking to me? Like, stretch forth your rod. And original Hebrew text explained that Moses had to step into the sea before it parted. And it was explaining the importance of acting in faith, right? We tend to have what we call analysis paralysis. When we have an idea to implement, we can be so caught in our head that we fail to act. It's different from acting rashly, right? And not even doing a business plan or having like a fair idea of what you want to do. But there is a thin line between overthinking something and doing. So in startup, we call it move fast and break things. You learn whilst you are doing, you fix the problem as it comes. And that's agile methodology, right? It's a faster way of doing things compared to what traditionally people would do. And they would take a longer time. You move and you build, you consult, move, build, and consult. And that's what I will use to answer your question, especially as Christians. As soon as we get the idea, we have spoken to God about it, we have prayed, we have gotten a conviction. The next step is to start to do it. And in doing, we will get more questions and more answers. Nobody who created a company had all the answers in the beginning. But as they built, they had more ideas coming. They were able to hire more people who brought even better ideas. And that's where we see all the larger companies today. Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting, because normally, like you said, what really makes us not able to move is the fact that we are stuck and we really don't know what to do. And I think most people kill most of the ideas because of that. Is because they project in their mind and they are like, whoa, I think I'm going to fail. It's like you calculate your mind, one, two, like,
isn't it?
It's not going to work. Maybe God has said,
how do you qualify before you even start? When I was running the Ghana Innovation Hub, we literally had a program called Ideation Stage Programs, where you just come with your idea, fund it, right? It doesn't have to have been implemented. Of course, we'll coach you on how to get like validation on the idea. But people literally came with only ideas and they got grants to implement the ideas. I think sometimes we also fail to push our ideas because we don't know about opportunities out there. And that's why I'm glad for this podcast, but also why I started my company, The Innovation Spark. Because between my co-founders and I, we realized that, especially in Ghana, there's a lot happening. If you're a startup, there are a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, Ghanaian youth don't know about these opportunities. So we created a platform where every week we share what's happening in the country when it comes to startup and innovation, where to find information, which institutions are giving out grants, who is raising how much, so that you as a startup can learn, okay, there are opportunities there. I shouldn't be in my own small corner. If I go to this incubation or innovation program, they can help me to improve my idea. Yeah. So maybe you can share the link with your listeners
Yeah.
as well, if anyone's looking for how to build a startup or looking for ideas.
Yeah, and that's what Amish has stepped up. So he's literally the distributor. He's within the supply chain, the distributor. So in case you have any great ideas, he may not only give you out the partnership you need, he will also coach you and direct you in how to transform your ideas into something great that we all can benefit from. So the links will be provided down below in the description box so that you could explore this wonderful avenue. So this is very huge. Thank you so much, Amish. So diving
My
into that
pleasure.
aspects of building, I think I liked the aspect that you spoke about. Do, learn, do. And I think that is the best way of learning, especially if you're doing something that um especially has never been done before. You have not done before, and this is a new space for you. So this is very encouraging. In case you are building something, first take the first step, and then the questions come, and you find the next place to solve the next question, and you may move on. So we are expecting great works from you, even as we roll out in this podcast. Now, two aspects that I want us to cover will be frustration and mental pressure. Most people are not ready for what is coming. They are not ready for the storm that is coming. So, what would you? How would you advise people in holding down the pressure that comes? Because you thought you were seeing the glory, but you didn't realize the process is that of. I was listening to the Nvidia co-founder Jusen was he was like he was almost crying as he said it. Like you could see that the statement was coming from his heart, deep. His company is like the most valuable company now, but I think he was making a statement and he was like, "It's hard, it's very hard," and he was literally almost crying making that statement. He was laughing and saying it was like, "It's hard, it's very hard," and most
pain, yeah.
yeah, and most of us are not ready. I think when we see that people are jumping up on stage, we don't know like the stuff that is going on. So how would you advise people sort of the mental pressure and even enduring through the process? The frustration and endurance.
Okay. Yeah. I'll say, because again, Christian principles, right? Take a page from Psalms. David is honestly one of the most honest praying kings, but he was also at the pinnacle of society, right? He was a king. He faced pressure the most. He was being attacked by his mentor to kill him, and the insane amount of things he went through. At one point he had to fake that he was actually mentally insane. And every time you go to the Psalms, you see what he says, right? Like, he tells you how much his soul is anguished. Then he will end up talking to himself, it's like, my soul, why are you downcast? And then he will tell himself, look to God. The cure for deep frustrations and overwhelming feelings is, again, God. But there is also science behind it about your ability to think positive and speak positive to yourself. One of my favorite verses is Philippians chapter 4. I think the verse is 6. I forgot it. But it says that whatever is true, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, whatever is noble, if there's anything praiseworthy or excellent, think about these things, right? Because it wires your brain differently. I've been very frustrated before my first startup. I became CEO after 2 years because the CEO had left to work for Facebook. And I honestly didn't know how we were going to get our next batch of funding, how I was going to pay people. And I'll be overwhelmed. The only thing that was literally the Psalms. there was one point I didn't know what to do. I told God, this is what your word says. I have no idea what to do. Please provide a way. The next thing I knew, like, it turned out way better than I thought. But this was in the heat of startup pressure, right? We have to be able to come to God. When I was at MEST, there were different coping mechanisms for different people. And I'm not happy to say it, but some of my colleagues would party and drink a lot, right? So happy hour Friday nights. A lot of people I knew started smoking weed for the first time to handle the pressure. But you see, these are all different coping mechanisms that the world offers. But what God says, come to me if you are burdened and heavy laden, and I will give you rest, right? Take my yoke upon you. My burden is easy, and my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. So you trade your heavy laden burdens for God, and He gives you a calmness and a lightness. And honestly, that's the best approach. But you also surround yourself with a community of people who can encourage you and build you up. So one of the things that I started when I was managing the Ghana Innovation Hub was fuck up nights, excuse my French, but people to share stories of failures that they had gone through, just so that you know that, okay, it's not all glamorous, like you said, Arthur. People do go through a lot in the startup world. And for me to appreciate that there is a lot of valleys before there are hills. And that's also encouraging people, right? Like to find a community of other CEOs, other startup founders who can encourage you when you're at your lowest. Ideally Christian, so they build you up also with the word of God and let you know that, listen, we all go through this. Have you considered this? That's what the word of God says. I have a mentor who can help you in this. And then that's how we do it. Take it at a time.
Wow. So I think partnering with people and getting encouragement from different Christians who will be able to support you. So that's such a blessing.
Yeah.
So whatever you're going through.
Nice.
Yeah. I think one of the stuff Jesus used to say will be, your brothers in the world are going through the same thing with you. When you're talking about it's like you getting connected sort of makes you story. Yeah. And that's so amazing. Wow. So in case you're going through frustration, in case you're going through discouragement, in case you are looking for directions, you don't know where to turn to, and you feel like going back, don't give up. God has several people ready for you to take you to your next place. So Amish, thank you so much. We'll be moving to the next one, which is I remember there was an ad by MTN. I think when they were initially starting the mobile money stuff, and there was a woman who had another woman who had received money from the son or I think one family member, and they were all jubilating. And then the famous question came, "Nasikano way." So I think what everybody will be asking, where am I going to get the money to fund this whole thing? This is so difficult.
Yeah.
So as somebody who has funded people, as somebody who has supported people, as somebody who has run the startup board, done so many great things, can you touch on the funding process and what people need to know and how people can be directed in that area?
So first of all, let me just let everyone know, if you're listening to this, if you're a founder or you're looking for money, there is money out there. No matter what world is saying, no matter what people are saying. And that's why it's important, right, to focus your mind on whatever is like true, lovely, admirable, like we said. There's a lot of money out there, Arthur. Just sitting on the table. There are people who have come to me who have money and they don't know what to do with it. There are institutions that must spend their money before the year ends, and they are looking for people to give their money to, right?
I never knew that.
Don't
actually.
go around that. Yes, it's actually it. And I'm getting my project management professional certification, PMP certification. And one of the things that we learned was, even in your budget, right? there is contingency budget, but there's also management reserves, money that the management knows that these people might need this money, but they don't know they need it. So we'll just put it here for now. When they need money, they will come to us. Do you see? And we will go back to the project implement and partner, and you tell them, this is the money we took. We finished the project. This is the money that's left. They will think you are not serious because you budgeted and you have money left. So even in project management, you're encouraged to spend all the money that they give you. Otherwise, next time they won't give you money. So it's crazy. There are institutions that are literally set up every year, and their KPI, their success metric is how much money did we spend this year, or how much money did we give away? And if they haven't spent that amount of money, they didn't perform well that year. So it's crazy, right? But something like this exists. So for you as someone starting your business, someone, an entrepreneur out there, what you want to do is understand your business, clearly know what sector you are in, and understand the rules of the game of your sector. So my sister has a shea butter business, right? She makes shea butter oil soaps. But my sister has understood the business so much that now she is a certified skincare formulator. She's gotten certification in making shea butter. She's got certification in making soaps, making oils. She's also a chemical engineer. So when she comes to tell you this is what she does, you believe her more than her competitor who is also doing the same thing but has not gone through accreditations. Now she runs training programs for institutions that want to target women to empower them. That's a new stream of revenue that other people don't have access to. Now she's able to create her own line of products and get it FDA certified because of her certifications. And she's able to tap into international development organizations that are looking to promote women who are doing significant things in their sectors, right? Because she improved on her craft and she was able to better position herself. I've had investors who have asked for good startups in different sectors, but the startups that I am aware of do not meet their criteria. They are not operating at the highest standard. They don't even have like records of what they are doing. They don't even have good financial records. They don't have any form of accreditation. They have not even gotten FDA approval, etc. So I can't recommend them. But these people are looking for African startups to invest. So it's the craziest thing. For you as an entrepreneur, you need to up your game and you need to become excellent. And that is the only way that, again, your preparation will meet your readiness. And that's what you call luck. But yeah, I can send a whole list of people who are funding in Ghana, people who are funding in Africa. In Ghana, actually, now there's a fund of funds. So they provided, I forgot, 100 million CDs for other startups and incubation companies to give money to other startups, if you get what I mean. So the larger organizations are giving money to other organizations to give out more money.
Wow.
And these are all there on Innovation Spark reports.
Wow. So in case you're willing to take your business, your ideas to the next level, Innovation Spark is there for you. So the team is ready. We have all the links there for you so that you can be able to explore this great stuff. So I think we've moved into a great momentum. So I like the story of your sister taking the gifts and then putting an accreditation on top, polishing it and pushing for excellence. So I think that's what perhaps you could be your next level, is moving from that gift that you have and sort of preparing, pulling up all the fire hose, whatever you need to be able to add on top of it to make it an excellent thing. Now, one thing that people really fund, we talk about the investors. So how do you present your case to people willing to support you, fund you? What are some of the stuff that you could check up on? Any tip you could give us, the preparation for all those?
Yes. You know, when Pharaoh called Joseph to come and interpret the dream, The first thing he did was to go wash himself, trim his beard, and appear before the king. But what Pharaoh asked for was Joseph to come and interpret the dream, but he went through, protocols. And I think that's what, especially for us as Christians and as entrepreneurs, we should be aware of. Before you appear before an investor, you have to be prepared. Know exactly what you want. If you are raising money, how much you are raising it for, and what you are going to use it for. But sometimes you don't even need money. What you need is someone to push what you are doing, a strategic partner, or sometimes even equipment financing. That might have otherwise cost you way more than the money that you are raising. But you won't know this if you haven't done a proper auditing of you yourself, your business, and what you need. Sometimes you need more people to help you so that you can expand. Sometimes you need new technology to help you work fast. I told you about my sister. When she started, she used to use it to whip the butter herself. But as she expanded, she realized that number one, she needed machines to help her do it faster. And then also extra people to help her meet the orders that she was getting. Right? You should be able to answer this question as soon as I ask you. We call it elevator pitch. You have 1 minute to tell me about your business and get me interested to ask you for another meeting or to come and meet me in my office. In 1 minute, can you tell me who you are, what your business does, and what you need for your business? And will you be able to tell me so that I am convinced to have a follow-up conversation with you? So start with understanding the full scope of your business. Nobody should know your business more than you. You should even know what your competitors are doing and what's making them great, right? So when you talk, I know this is someone who understands what he's working on. And even though I've met other people who are doing what this person is doing, I am confident that this person will make the funding I'm giving them work. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I think that one of the most famous lines is the 1 minute elevation. I never liked it as somebody who was always outside, but I realized that yeah, that's true. You should be able to tell us what your business is all about in 1 minute. Yeah, I think 1 minute is quite a long time
Yeah.
for you not to know what you're, except you have some opinions that you don't know what you're guessing. You're second guessing your business. So that's so true. So first of all, be sure of what you're doing, know what it's all about, see how it would impact. And I think investors are always looking for revenue, right? The profit. Yeah.
Most of them, yes.
Yeah. Because they do
Some of them
massive.
are support you so that they can say, this is the impact we had when we came to Ghana, right?
Yeah. So
So
some
if
are
it
looking
makes,
for the profit, no matter where it go, whether it's monetary, whether it's impact, whether it's aid to people, whether it's legacy. They are looking to fund it for a reason. So you should be able to find someone that you can really explain it to. So thanks, Amish, for even that. Now we would round up with one last segment, like finding support, people that are equipped to support you on the journey. The team you need, people you need to help you. What will be your take on that one, too?
yes. So I mentioned community. When you're going through stress, who you talk to, it's unfortunate that we don't always find them in Christian circles or churches. But ideally, God's children should be your best support. I've had businessmen who have been embarrassed to hire people from their church because they came with the wrong attitude. They came with the entitlement. I am a serial networker. That means that I try to be in spaces where I find the people that I'm looking for whatever I need to do. So when my wife met me, she said that I was the mayor of Accra because almost everybody knew me. But what I was doing was to make sure that I was in the right spaces. and always know someone in at least one industry, because you never know where the opportunity might come from. You never know when you have to introduce someone to something else, right? And with time, this has become one of my greatest assets, my network, and how I can help you connect to any person in any industry in Ghana and Africa, right? That's literally my consulting job now. I help um, large tech companies enter the African markets because I can call up someone in Lagos or Nigeria who can help you set up. I can call up someone in South Africa, etc. But the way I did it was to be intentional in networking and to build trust with the people that I network with. So that means that if you meet someone, you are going to follow up and you are going to let the person know, my name is Ammishaddai. We met at this event. This is what we talked about. I'm excited, to build this relationship. And you follow up and you offer value. Value could be, oh, Emmanuel, when we were talking, you told me about this segment of your podcast. I've met this person who does this. He might be an interesting asset to you. You want to interview this person. That's value to you, Emmanuel, right? So this is a good line from the movie The Forge that Emmanuel, you should watch. It says that learn to be a fountain and not a drain. A fountain gives, a drain drips, right? So focus more on giving than receiving. And in the giving, that's where you offer value. With time, you'll find out that these people will become your greatest asset. You might need someone to refer you to someone else, and this person that you offer value to every day will be the person. My co-founder was not my co-founder when we started. He was someone I met at a party, but I kept in touch. And when I needed help to run my first accelerator program, I reached out and he helped. And then afterwards, we started doing more things together, and now we are co-founders. And he has a whole network that otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to. But it was in value and it was in networking, right? So number one, network. Learn the art of networking. Unfortunately, Ghanaian youth don't know how to network. I want to believe every other part of the world, if you are listening to this, you have put some effort in networking. But just learn the art of networking. What are some of the conversations that you bring up, right? How do you continue the conversation afterwards? You say hello and you follow up. You don't just say hello and wait for the person to respond. This is like basic etiquette, but you'll be surprised how this will differentiate you from everyone else. Arthur, is the same for you. When you reach out, you went straight to the point. This is what I'm doing. I would love to have you on the show. Versus, hello, Amish, long time, and then full stop. To be honest, I wouldn't have responded if it was that, right? Because, come on, like I have a lot of message. So yes, that's the bits I can share. If you have any follow-up questions, I can answer.
Yeah, so we'll finish up with one last two, which is the documentation, getting your documentations, registering, all those paperwork that comes along. Some people don't know sometimes they will need lawyers in their life. Like I remember listening to Jack Ma. Jack Ma said, I never thought I would need lawyers in my life. So how do you think about even the paperwork? And we come to getting the right people to support you. What are the qualities that you'll be needing in this too? So you can take us through the two.
Yeah, this line in Romans that I'm not a fan of. So in Romans, I think 15 or 16, it talks about obeying the laws of the land and the authority in the land, right? Because God has put them there. And if you're doing, then you won't be afraid. But it's for those who are doing enough good work.
Several people are not fans of this verse.
Yeah. But there is a reason why it's in the Bible. When you have your papers, when you have your documentation, it's easy for you to leverage the system of the land. Just yesterday, my co-founders and registered general's department, and they said we have to pay a penalty because we haven't declared our profits, even though we weren't making profits, right? But just by the system of that land, you have to declare your profits every year. And so that was something we had to do, right? And we did it because we are looking at a bigger opportunity that requires us to have that. So no matter who I know might bring in the opportunity, but if I don't have my documentation, I want to be able to leverage that opportunity. It's the same with documentation. The reason why you document is so that you can show people your excellent culture and your excellence, right? You might need help. That is okay. You should pay for the help because the returns are far more than what you are paying. It's always better to have your papers and documentation in order for when you meet an opportunity than you've now met the opportunity and now you have to figure it out. You will miss it. The world is not waiting for, everyone. So yeah, I would say right from the bat, if you need a lawyer, especially for co-founders, for your shareholding agreement, have a lawyer look through it for you. It could even be a student lawyer. There are now several platforms where you can get lawyers for cheaper prices, especially for startups. Shout out to Zuputo. My friend has a legal startup company.
Wow.
So hire a lawyer if you need to. Get your shareholding agreement done, especially with your co-founders. Agree who has majority stakes, what happens when someone is leaving. Have all these difficult conversations in the beginning so that when you are on tangent, it's not going to come and bite you back.
Yeah. And the registering process, how do you go about in getting your solidifying your holding, the registration process for people that haven't yet registered or certified their company?
Okay. So the good news is now, and depending on which part of the world you are, most of this process is digitalized. So even for Ghana, you can download all the documentations online. You fill them and then you take them to the Registrar Generals. I went to the Accra head office and there are actually people who are ready to help you. They're actual staff, not like, third parties. So don't be too intimidated by it. Take the first step by visiting the office and ask their questions. They will be able to help you. We are looking at Innovation Spark to have a session next year where we take startups through the entire process from beginning to end, everything you need to do when you're registering your company. But currently, it's all available online. If you Google it, you find it. If you are in other parts of the world, I'm sure if you Google for that that country, you also find it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wow, that's so amazing. Well, finishing off our last but one question. The question which remains to be answered. So, getting the quality people. I remember you talking about your co-founder. What are some of the? Is it the skill set? Are you looking for the person's skill set to join your team? Are you looking for the person's spiritual life? Are you looking at the person's reputation? Are you looking for what are some of the stuff you could check maybe the person's history with you? What are the stuff that you look for as you bring people on board to support your idea?
One of the leaders from the John Maxwell Leadership Conference I told you about said something. She said that if you have staff, they have to have three qualities. They can either be competent, they can have the right attitude, or they can have a willingness to learn, right?
Mm.
And if they have if they don't have them, forget about it. Most people who are competent might come off as arrogant because their confidence in their skill sets is there, right? But for some companies, you need competence to start with. If you're building a tech company, you need a CTO who can actually code. And CTOs are usually no offense to CTOs, but because they are brainy, they know their stuff. They can be full of themselves and they think that the product is everything. But other qualities you asked are the willingness to learn and the attitude. Because even as investors, what we look at for is the dynamics. As long as this team can work together and figure things out, it doesn't matter what will come their way, we know that they will figure it out. But if the team is wrong, we know that this team is going to break up. As soon as something goes wrong, they are going to break up. So we won't even invest. And they might be very sharp, they might be very intelligent, but we won't invest because we know it's going to break up, right? Find people who will be willing to learn with you, people who have the right attitude to encourage you when you don't know what you are doing, and people also with the right skill set. But you can find a healthy balance of these three. And you can find them on LinkedIn, you can find them on social media, you can find them in places where you are not used to going. You can find them in networking events. So be more active on LinkedIn, be more active in networking events.
Sure. So to those out there, Amish is saying that be an extrovert for once. Step out there and find someone, connect with people, get people that you feel are competent. And like we're saying, you can't be the CTO and not know how to code. The whole point of being a CTO is to code. So
Right.
yeah. So you can't be a product manager then not be thinking about products, right? So whatever you are doing, there should be some competence in there. So and this is a great blessing to us. So Amish has shared with us a lot even about Innovation Spark and their initiatives, stuff that you would pay for to get. But by the grace of God, we managed to be able to get him here to be able to help us, even as God is moving us. So, Amish, thank you so much for the wonderful stuff that we've learned. I've learned a lot. I've discovered a lot, and I'm blessed. Now, we'll finish up with one important question. How is the relevance of prayer even as you're starting, even as you're moving, even as you're completing, even as you are thinking, brainstorming, how does the prayer help to support even as you're trying to build things?
So one of the best things I've heard is prayer shouldn't be reactive, right? Prayer should be rather progressive, or what's the word? Initiated. You should take initiative in prayer. You shouldn't wait until things go bad before you pray. You should actually put everything in prayer. And to answer your question bluntly, prayer is 100% important before and after and during when you're starting. Before, because God gives you direction. During, because God protects you and shields you. And even after, because like, just to be able to go to the next step, God can help you. My testimony is the company I'm currently working with. So outside Innovation Spark is my baby, right? With my two co-founders. But God gave me the opportunity to work with a company called GSD Africa. And we are scattered over 20 countries in Africa and Asia. Before I got this job, what I did was pray. I didn't do anything else. And even the way I got the job was funny. It was a normal call. It was like a Zoom call like this. They told me to tell them about myself. I shared with them very funny stories. And next thing I knew, they said, Amish, we want you to be the country lead, right, for Ghana. But it was all through prayer. You can't downplay it. You can't overestimate it in any way. I wish I could say prayer and something else, but yeah, prayer, time with God, prayer.
Oh, so this is a great enlightenment for us. Prayer 100%. I like the way he said it. Bluntly, prayer 100%. So you can't start anything without God leading you. So make sure that even as you increase your planning gauge, your networking gauge, your slideshows, all the stuff, make sure that you are initiating the gauge of prayer too as well. So I mean, we've really been blessed. This is Power Pack. I told you the person I'm bringing is the whole superhero, the Avengers coming live. So we're just happy that you're able to join us, Amish. And I think this this episode would really live on, and we are hoping that you'll be able to transform the world and be able to build the stuff that God has asked you to build. So thank you for joining us, Amish. Thank you for coming to this new episode and for gracing our episode, even as we are trying to build things up and provide a community for Christian leaders to be able to share something helpful. So this is Speaking of God podcast. We're still on the journey. We are meeting great people on the way. So in case you want to join us for the next episode, subscribe, come on board, and let's have a wonderful time together. Amish, salute to you. And to those at home, salute to you all. Thank you. Bye.